problems in the world without war. We have toppled dictators without war. We've done it with nonviolent direct action. We eliminated racial segregation in the South without war. It's possible to change things without war. And so it's a decision we have to make. We mustn't give up. We mustn't think we're impotent. We mustn't think, well, government has all the power, and what can we do? I'm sure you have had the same experience I have, of people all around you, and maybe yourself also, feeling helpless. Of course, they want us to feel helpless. We feel helpless. You know what I mean by they. There is a they. They want us to feel helpless, and then we won't do anything. But it's important to understand, one, the history of people's struggles, which show that there are times in history when people who were apparently without power developed that power and were able to accomplish things against the awesome power of wealth and militarism. Times like that have happened in history. It's important to know that history. It's important to know that governments, with all their power, are dependent for their power on us. The power of great institutions is based on the obedience of the people. When people withdraw their obedience, the most powerful entities lose their power. Working people learned this when they went out on strike. Faced the power of massive power of corporations in the 1930s, General Motors, Ford, huge, overwhelming power that you can't do anything against Ford or General Motors, you ordinary, miserable workers. But when the workers at the Ford plant, the workers at General Motors, the workers at U.S. Steel went out on strike, Ford and General Motors were helpless, and they had to give in. And that's how some changes were made in the living conditions of people. That's how the 8-hour day was won. Corporations depend on the obedience of workers. Governments depend for war on the obedience of soldiers. And so you mustn't believe them when they say, oh, we will never do this. General Motors, oh, we will never give in to the Union. Lyndon Johnson and Nixon saying, we will never cut and run from Vietnam. George Wallace, I remember in 1960, somewhere in the mid-1960s, talking to a group of his supporters in Alabama, saying, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Wild applause. No, the South will never change. 2 years later, Wallace was campaigning in black neighborhoods for their vote, because in the meantime, the Voting Rights Act had been passed as a result of the black movement, and now Wallace had to humbly come before the black voters. So, the history is littered with the statements of people in power saying, we will never do this, and we will never do that, and they do. So it's up to us to be disobedient, to withdraw our support in every possible way we can, to create democratic institutions even outside of the official frameworks, and take a clue from what has happened before in history, and only then will democracy come alive. And to be patient, because it doesn't come right away. Change comes as a result of people being persistent and persistent and persistent, as a result of people losing struggles, losing and losing and losing and losing until they win, because they don't give up. And what's heartening is that even when you lose, you win. Or to put it another way, whether you win or not today or maybe you won't win for another 20 years, but whether you win or not, to be engaged in the struggle for justice with other people, to be engaged in the struggle against war, to be engaged in doing something and helping people all over the world and crossing out national boundaries and showing solidarity with people everywhere. To do that, to be engaged in that, whether you win immediately or not, is itself a victory. Thank you.